Did you then do high school?
No.
Ever?
Nope.
You just had 4 years. The math isn't mathing.
This is going to sound really weird. I started attending college when I was 14 years old.
I'm Hank Green, and I desperately want to learn how people have learned. And so, I'm talking to people about that. And today, I'm talking to comedian, writer, performer, and all-around great guy, my friend Brennan Lee Mulligan. We're talking about his life, his career, and his college journey.
So I want to talk about your education journey and stuff. Are you working on anything right now?
Always more awesome seasons of Dimension 20. Junior year is coming out right now. We got a few seasons in the can for that.
I forgot to add to your list, professional Dungeons and Dragons player, which is a real thing that is a job.
Yeah.
Some very few people have.
Very few people have it. Believe me, we wake up in a sense of stunned and bewildered gratitude every day. But Dimension 20, Dropout, make some noise. The podcast, Worlds Beyond Numbers, going great. Bunch of fun projects. And the greatest project of all, my wonderful family, was my wife Isabella Rowland, who we're going on tour with our improv show Bigger this spring, and we also welcomed a new baby into the world whose name and face we are sitting on until such time as she can speak in English and say that she's cool with us sharing that.
Well, I gotta say, I have a 7-year-old. I still don't trust him he can speak in English, but I'm not trusting him.
You're like,
he's like, I want 1 million subscribers, and I'm like, no.
I had this exact conversation where I was like, listen, there are pros and cons to accumulating a wide viewership. A lot of the pros require you to have done it through some professional activity, not getting them because of your dad.
Right.
That kind of just brings the negatives and very few of the positives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you have always been a storyteller. You've always been, you create in your mind and you share that with the world. Do you have an idea of when that began?
Pre-memory. My mom and dad are very wont to remind me. My dad always reminds me that I corrected his bedtime stories. I noted them.
Oh yeah, Warren does that.
Yeah. Where it's like, hey, he's like, and then there was a purple wizard who rode a tiger, and I'd be like, he rode a lion. Noting,
Yeah, I'm like, you tell the story then, dude. I don't need to. Do I need to be here? I don't know.
You seem to have such a clear grasp of how these events unfolded. And then my mom, I think that the thing I credit as an early this is going to be what this is my mom, who was a comic book writer. Wrote Starstruck, a comic book sci-fi author Elaine Lee. Sat down at an old Macintosh computer back in the early 90s, and when I would tell stories, she would type them. She was I was dictating stories to her. And even though that is the foggiest edge of memory for me, I know the impact that having your mom, having a grown-up go, actually, this is very important. This story about a tiger mouse, and this story about how you should be allowed to walk with your socks and no shoes outside, and we're going to write this down. And that was It
sounds like a true story that you remember, or at least apocryphally has been told.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is there a similar situation with regards to gaming? Because that is always a thing as well.
That started when I was 10. Gaming started when I was 10 years old. Once again, we have to shout out noted sci-fi author Elaine Lee. My mom, who this may not be a surprise for a kid that memorized a lot of animal facts. I was horrendously bullied in school. Put into trash cans, kicked around the playground.
Sure.
Bad look, bad time. And I was taken out of school. So my education was, I went to a Waldorf school for preschool.
Okay.
K through 4, and by the end of 4th grade, the bullying was bad enough that I was taken out of school, and I homeschooled for 4 years.
Wow.
Very heroic effort on my mom and pop's part. Big lift from them that they were, as artists and freelancers, able to kind of educate us and still be working. And during that time, I got put in karate classes, and for self-confidence and self-defense, and my mom had me join a D&D group for socializing. She put up a notice in October Country, this little local game store.
I have heard about something called the Wayfinder Experience. Did that come soon after that?
That was the same year. So, or shortly thereafter. When I was 11 years old, I started attending this LARP camp nearby, and
you can't get bullied at LARP camp.
You cannot get
because everybody's been through it.
Well, that's the thing, is you're resetting. You've basically been sorted by society. And now you go, okay, we're here at the island of misfit toys. I guess we get to start over.
So LARP is live action role playing. So it's like you are playing a game pretending to be in another world, universe, have different rules of some kind.
I believe there's a documentary premiering this year about Wayfinder called We Can Be Heroes that's all about the camp and everything like that. And yeah, it was an incredible, artistic, welcoming, passionate, nerdy community that also just had all the great stuff about a summer camp of teaching you how to connect with peers. And then my brother and I, when we were 15.
Is your brother older or younger?
Same age. We're not biologically related.
Okay.
My brother Griffin,
Gotcha.
Griffin Johnston, is a great web designer and amazing, brilliant designer and artist and entrepreneur. And he and I, he's about 5 months older than me. And we met when we were 4 years old.
Gotcha.
And we're best friends and brothers, we were best friends first, and then his dad met my mom. They fell in love, became married.
Oh, you did that.
We did that. Parent trapped him. Got him. We were only able to afford to go to one camp a year, and we realized that the reason that these other kids had such a strong community and all remembered each other's names was they were rich. They were going to 8 weeks of camp a summer. They spent 2 out of 12 months hanging out together. We would show up for our 1 week, and people would be friendly.
Yeah.
But we were like, I think something's going on.
They all know each other really well.
They know each other really well.
Oh man, can't imagine just like being like, bye kid.
Bye,
See you
kid.
in 2 months.
See you in 2 months. Oh God, yeah.
It was overnight.
Oh well, when I became a staff member at the camp, for the overnights, that was the thing.
You became a staff member at the camp.
Oh yes. My brother and I, when we were 15, we were like, we got to be able to go to more camp than we're going to. And
so instead of us paying you, you pay us.
Yes, truly. When we were 15, we started a company called Bootleg Adventures, which I was 15 years old, and my brother was 15 as well. And there was a referral program, so the camp gave you $50 for every kid you got to sign up, because they had started a new company. And so their first summer was a very low attendance. And then we ran an event. We ran our second event. At our second event, it had over 100 participants, and we got 40 of them to sign up for camp, which like tripled or quadrupled the paying participant percentage of the camp. And we said 40 kids, $50 each. We would like to attend these camps. And they said, how about this? You just pay for room and board for the whole summer, and we hire you and give you shares in the company. Oh. And so we became part owners when we were 15.
When you were children.
We were children.
That's very weird.
It's very weird.
I would not give a child part ownership in my company.
What if you and 30 other owners were all 21?
Oh, 30 other owners.
Yes.
That sounds messy. Is it? Did you sort of get a lot of? Have you then from there? Did you continue?
Yes. So I wrote
leading in that space.
Yeah, I became sort of a de facto head of the story department for a number of years. I wrote like 40 games. There was one summer that I wrote like half the games that got run that summer.
And did you have like relationship with a lot of the younger people?
Oh, in terms of like mentoring and there were a lot of I had mentors in the older staff generation. I had my peers that were co-staff members, and many younger kids. I was like, and some of those kids are now full adults.
Yeah,
which is I remember there was one summer I started going back a couple years ago. I went back. I'm sitting on a picnic table with another staff member who was my camper. I knew them when I was an adult and they were 11. And now they're a full adult and they're sitting on a picnic table with me looking at the capture the flag field, watching one of their campers be a staff member for the first time. And they look at me and they're like, I can't believe it, man. I feel so old. And I said, you cannot say that to me.
Yeah.
You're my child.
Yeah. Well, get ready, because you're not even old yet. You're still We got ways to go. We hope. Still. So what about mentoring is important to you?
I have always loved it. Truly, you can say the parts of teaching that are selfless. You can say the parts like teaching is a good on the earth. So if you want to affect the attitude of going like, I do it for the noblesse oblige of imparting knowledge on the truth is this. When I am with someone who is looking for something that I have and I can give it to them, whether it's knowledge about how to do an improv scene, whether it's knowledge about how to write an adventure game, whether it's knowledge about how to run a game of DnD, the look on someone's face when they get it and it becomes theirs as well.
Oh, it becomes,
And because that's the whole thing, where it's like lighting a candle, like the lighting of a second candle does not diminish the first.
Yeah.
Knowledge is something that when you share it, there's just more. There's no scarcity.
Right.
And watching someone learn is one of life's greatest joys. So that's why I like teaching.
I love that. Thanks, man.
Hey.
That feels
It's perfectly selfish. I love to watch. That's when you're a teacher, you have a front row seat to learning, which is the most beautiful thing to watch. It's great.
Did you then do high school?
No.
Ever?
Nope.
You just had 4 years. The math isn't mathing.
This is going to sound really weird. I started attending college when I was 14 years old. 14 years old.
You've been homeschooled for 4 years.
Yes.
And you're thinking about higher ed right now. You're thinking about college at 14.
Yeah. So what ends up happening is, and a lot of
because you're thinking, 4 years from now I got to go to college, and like how is that going?
How is that going?
I'm not going to get my Wayfinder money for my affiliate sales for kids.
Yes.
To pay for
to this day, my LARP summer camp has never paid me a cent in dividends. That's not why we do it. No one's making that LARP camp, and that's not the point. The point is just to is the good of the institution.
Sure.
But it was expressed gently and lovingly that if college were going to happen, a number of financial aid hurdles would have to be overcome, and a number of scholarship hurdles would have to be overcome. And so,
and that maybe even some early credits, so you don't have to pay for as much as a school. Yeah.
Certain schools have a certain amount of scholarships that are reserved for transfer students, right? So there's a lot.
So like a smaller number.
Yes. Yeah. Like it's a smaller number of scholarships, but a way smaller pool of people competing, of applicants, right? So we ended up, there was a place near us called Ulster County Community College that the year we joined became part of the SUNY system. So it took us 3 years to get this 2-year degree, because the first 2 years we were not old enough to take our GED, and so we couldn't take a full course load.
Gotcha.
So we were kind of hybrid SUNY, Ulster, still some homeschooling. This
is weird.
It was weird. We were in a class. Now, I will
was
say
that overwhelming? Was the course load heavy?
We were incredibly precocious to the point of me feeling a cringe of embarrassment at how precocious we were. You know what I mean?
Right. It's like we don't need to be crossing all these boundaries. And
I think doing it all hand in hand with my brother helped.
Yeah.
We would ride our bicycles to college in our pajama pants. These weird little homeschool kids walk in. We were 14-year-old philosophy majors. If you can imagine something more annoying than that.
That sounds very precocious. That's not like your parents are like, we need to talk about movies and TV shows in the house, and that's the only allowed topics.
I mean, truly, can you just imagine and this it was 1 year away from being a community college. There were a ton of continuing education. Weirdly, there were. So in other words, don't think of like a party school, like Animal House kind of vibe. It's like a lot of older people, and there were a lot of homeschoolers like us who had done this track during high school years. And it was just, I just have horrifying memories of people in a philosophy 101 being like, I don't know, these are my deeply held beliefs. And me and my brother being like, boo, wrong, inconsistent, fallacious.
Oh my God, that's a nightmare.
It was a nightmare. I apologize to everyone that knew me at that time.
So you picked philosophy because you were a 14-year-old precocious child? Is that what the sort of decision there?
I picked philosophy because of a really extraordinary professor.
Oh.
My philosophy professor, who has since passed away and is very dearly missed by every student he ever had, was Professor Tom Davis, who was the philosophy professor for SUNY Ulster and is one of the most remarkable professors I've ever encountered, and whose reputation really extends beyond.
That's wild.
He was a perfect man. He was a perfect man. He looked.
That's if you study philosophy enough. Here's what happens.
Here's what happens. Just imagine.
You become a perfect man. We're all working toward it.
We're all right, but he was, man. I won't hear anything. If any of his family or friends want to tell me differently,
please. I believe you, but I don't want to know.
I don't want to. I'm sure he would agree. He would disagree with me voraciously. He looked just like Merlin from Disney's Sword in the Stone, but with a little bit of a shorter beard, but otherwise a total face match. And he had a deep Flatbush accent like Bugs Bunny. He was really incredible, and he did an amazing job. There was a lot of philosophy of religions and the philosophy, he went through the basics and then covered a lot of interesting stuff, the philosophy of leadership and different governmental models, and he was a very cool guy.
Did you feel mentorship from that relationship?
Yeah. We cornered that dude for like 30 minutes after every class.
Jeez. I mean, I love these two kids, and I hate these two kids.
I get it. Hey, man, I'm right there with you.
Did you kind of indicated that your parents didn't necessarily expect that you would go do a higher education thing, that it was sort of your call? Did you feel an expectation?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
But it was. I want to say it was not a trip that was put on us. I think that there's a cultural expectation of it that never got challenged. If we had put up a big fight to not do college, I don't think my parents would have been antagonistic about that.
But that didn't feel like it was on the table, or you just...
It didn't feel like it was on the table. It just felt like this is the natural progression for what one does after a certain age.
Yeah. So you were getting your GED while you were in community college?
That's correct, yeah.
Was there any drawbacks to that?
No, I mean, getting the GED was all things being equal, like that was a pretty smooth process.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing because I think, again, people's associations with your GED, once again, there were people in that GED class who were well into adulthood and were going back to, fully matriculate to have graduated high school. Yeah. And for us, it was in order for us to be able to more affordably and quickly finish an associate's degree at SUNY Ulster.
So what age were you when you graduated with your associates?
17. And that's also the age that I went to a bachelor's program in the city in New York.
Was there like an alternate universe where you found another path? Straight into comedy, or? Yeah,
I think so. There are many alternate paths, right? And I think in terms of my relationship to SVA, so I went to school for screenwriting at the School of Visual Arts in New York as a 4-year program.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was the film department. So I went there 2005 to 2009. The film department was a strong choice for me because it was a lot of, French New Wave, a lot of very independent, very artsy stuff. Yeah. And I went there with an interest in making genre fiction, which was not well received by I did not, this sort of howdy-doody looking homeschool kid rocked up to Hipster Central in 2009.
Yeah. And you're like, I want to tell space laser stories.
And everyone was like, we do not want to tell space laser stories.
Yeah.
The first day I walked in and my teacher, Zoran Amar, was seated on his desk, his old, Eastern European man who went, "My name is Zoran Amar. I come from a country which no longer exists." Oh my God. And he meant Yugoslavia, but in my head I went Atlantis. And, I didn't. We were on different wavelengths about what mattered in terms of vibe.
Did you feel like you were kind of getting, because you talk about a professor who gave you a lot of support. Did you also feel like you had professors who did not provide that fuel?
I think, sure. I mean, I had a professor...
Like even a drag on you?
In my second year, I had a professor who straight up read a script of mine that was like a 30-page script. And he came in and he looked at me for notes, and his note for the script was, "I don't understand this." And I was like, "What element?" And he was like, "The whole thing." And I was like, But you know who the main character
like
is.
The words?
Like
is
words?
it the words that are giving you the problem?
Yeah, and he was like,
Oof.
yeah. So, he just wanted everyone to write Glengarry Glen Ross again.
I don't know what that is. So it can't be that important.
It has a scene where Alec Baldwin yells at Jack Lemmon about closing sales.
I think maybe I have seen that.
Yeah.
Maybe just that once.
Coffees for closers, yeah.
Yeah.
I think if I had had my Demon Hunter character say coffee is for closers, I think maybe he would have liked it more.
So SVA, from my understanding, is not a cheap school. So how did that happen?
It was the school that gave me the biggest scholarship.
Okay.
And the most financial aid.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the decision-making factor.
Yeah.
And I had an older friend that had gone to the school and had said nice things about it. I really wanted to go to school in the city. Like New York was an important part of it to me. Like that's where I was sort of like grew up as a little kid, and I missed it. But it was very interesting because I think that like if I look back to zoom out, my experience at SUNY Ulster was so positive. And I had positive experiences at SVA. And it's no knock on the school, but I think when I got to SVA, I was not clear about what I was doing there.
Like you didn't understand it in your own head.
Yes.
Like not that you didn't like tell somebody else and they didn't understand.
No.
You didn't understand.
I didn't understand. In other words, I had been a very, I think I've always been a achievement-oriented person. But if you are that way in childhood, it can, we made this LARP company while I was going to SVA. That was also the time that I was the most creatively active at Wayfinder. So that's where a lot of my like initiative and agency was going. And I think I saw school as like, this is a place to get good grades, right?
Right.
In other words, I think that I was a little bit naive about not reading between the lines, where an institution presents you with an achievement rubric and says, this is what achievement looks like.
Right.
And you accept it unquestioningly. Yeah. And if I were to go back to 17-year-old Brennan, as he was like, I'm going to get this professor to like me. Yeah. I'm going to make a really good 10-minute student film. I'm going to do this great script about this thing, right? I would have gone back and said, hey, your adult life has already started. What this institution is presenting you with is opportunities for real skill building, meaning if you get good grades and forget the practical skills you got here, that was a net loss.
Right.
Right? If you don't retain the stuff, that's not good.
No one's looking at your GPA after you graduate.
No one has ever asked to look at my diploma. I know exactly where it is. I'm ready to show it.
It's good to have it.
Oh, yes.
It's good to have it because you shouldn't be lying about not having it, but...
Shouldn't you?
We'll leave that up.
You can edit that out.
Up to the world at large.
Yes.
But you have a diploma. I've never ever thought about my GPA since I graduated.
No.
I thought about a lot of the things I did. That's what they asked about.
Yes.
And that's what's on the resume. It's like the stuff I did while I was at school.
And I think too, especially because I went to school in New York, there's a part of, I went to see a show at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater where I ended up sort of starting my career. I saw a show there when I was 17. I started when I was 17. I didn't take classes there until I was 24.
Yeah.
That's a 7-year gap of...
You think they would have taken you precocious little howdy-doody ass on day one?
Hey, my man, Zach Woods rolled up in there with braces and like a sleeping bag.
If you're good enough.
Yeah, what I'm saying, I think that's the thing is that like a lot of people did start very young there.
Yeah.
Like there are some incredible... And Zach Woods is a genius. And I think that like... just looking at the timeline of, I think what it was the missed opportunity for me at SVA was, this is a transitional period. Start transitioning into adulthood now. You're in the metropolis. Go to some art shows. Go to some comedy shows. Start to build a professional network. Do stuff. Yeah. Take a job, right? Even if you miss a class here and there, take a job with someone who might hire you later. Your fellow students will be your peer group moving out from here. Yeah. It's not about impressing the professor. Can you impress this other guy who 10 years from now is going to sell a show somewhere?
Yeah.
And I think that part of it where you look at college instead of what happened, which was I treated college like the only achievements that are worthy are the ones presented by the bureaucracy of the institution.
Right.
And then I am dumped from the,
That's the path you take. Did you have people in your life who you felt like could help you understand how higher ed worked?
Yes, in different niches and elements of it. So like my mom was incredible at like navigating the financial aid bureaucracy when I first started, right?
That's so important and so hard.
So important. So I mean, that's the whole ballgame, right? If you can't do the mountain of paperwork, you effectively have your access barred, right? And her ability to navigate that was monumental. I had some professors that took a shine to me or were kindly to me. I had one professor that optioned a screenplay, which was huge.
Whoa.
She was a producer who optioned a screenplay for me, which was enormous. But also, even that, as I graduated, I was like, I optioned a screenplay. Next stop, Hollywood. And 4 years later, I was broke.
Next stop, eating Pop-Tarts only for a long time.
I'm a bartender who's missing his front tooth. Oh no, we're in trouble.
Those are expensive, front teeth.
Yes, very expensive.
Did you feel a feeling upon graduation? Or what was your sort of sense?
It was life is such a bizarre tapestry, because while that was happening, I graduated right before a summer of working for Wayfinder. So I was thinking about getting production lists in and writing games and doing camp and, all that stuff.
Why didn't you ever think to just go back and be full-time Wayfinder, man?
Because you can't be.
Oh, right. It's just summer.
Yeah. There's not enough cookies in that jar. Yeah. And it's an incredible, there were a lot of organizations that I was a part of that have that element to them where you come for a time or you come back every so often. Yeah. Wayfinder is something that I will always answer the bat phone for. Mm-hmm. They're incredible, and they are stewarded by some amazing leaders right now. Corey McDonald, Trina Bood Peterson, Judd Packard, Janet Packard, like some great people. But there just wasn't a space there for me at that time. And I literally said back in the day when I was thinking about, I was like, I would love to make Wayfinder my whole life. And I literally said, a friend of mine just sent me a very lovely card because I was helped Wayfinder out with something. And a bunch of kids that are fans of Dimension 20 have now signed up for the camp, and it's been a boon to them that way. Cool. I said back in the day, I was like, maybe I'll go become a famous I'll become a comedian or something, and that'll be how I help camp. And it kind of happened that way. We did it. The plan worked.
It's weird when a really bad plan works.
It shouldn't have worked.
One that shouldn't work.
Bad plan. Don't make that plan.
Speaking of, did you come out with debt?
Tremendous, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was lucky. I had effectively like a 50% scholarship and never lived in the dorms, so saved all the money of having to live in the dorms. And even with that,
you've gotten an associate's degree that presumably some of those credits applied. Yeah.
Yes. So I got out of there with 5 figures of debt.
Yeah.
I remember I paid off my debt and my credit rating got slammed because they're like, we don't ever want you out of debt. Take that, credit rating.
People who pay it off, we don't want to loan to them.
Yeah.
In the transition from this precocious high school age kid to college, did you have a sort of conception of who you are and how do you interact with the world, and then you have to transition maybe to a different way of people seeing you? Did you have a big shift there?
Yeah. Every new community of is this too sad? No, this is true. Every community of people I enter, I start with the presupposition that someone is going to pick me up and put me in a trash can. That's where we start. Hey, that's real. It's just, you're in a weird way. I was talking to Izzy about this, especially as new parents, where I was like, it's really messed up how this small series of years in your childhood, it is like the first time through the washing machine, and it sets a temperature that's really hard to shake, no matter how many positive experiences you have throughout life. So at Wayfinder, at UCB, at CollegeHumor, it's always that thing of I hope I'm not a very alienating homeschool kid with a lot of animal facts and philosophy stuff, that's going to be a huge burden on the people I talk to. And over time, like going from community to community, I know it's like a lot of my like talking about higher education and collaboration, and then going into work and the ways that reflects your academic environment. There's a lot of like, let me hopefully demonstrate value, and that will be my entree into this new community.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself.
Yeah.
To always be like, I'm here to deliver value, not to just be me and to be who I am. You sort of imagine yourself to be the value you're delivering rather than yourself. Or that your value is in what you deliver rather than who you are.
That's a great point, man.
I think the value is in who you are.
That's really sweet. I appreciate it.
But I also love that you deliver.
Hey, people tend to, but no, it's there's the academic, like, especially for people that are in college with that drive towards ambition and achievement.
Sure.
I think everybody has to manage that. To what degree am I feeling motivated and driven to succeed and provide for people? And then what percentage of me is, letting the soft animal of my, the Mary Oliver,
Was there did you feel like ever that screenwriting was like a mistake? Both like when you were in school?
I don't think it was. I don't think of screenwriting as the mistake. Like that was excellent practice.
Yeah.
It was really, really great. And it was helpful for a lot of reasons. Like, a lot of the things I use the most, or like, honestly, I should have focused even more on screenwriting. Like, Story by Robert McKee has some of the best dungeon mastering advice I've ever read in it. Like, it's an interesting thing because there are so many different media of storytelling that focus on different aspects of what it means to tell a story. And I think screenwriting really helped every other kind of storytelling I do.
Yeah.
Robert McKee, the stories are not about their premises, they're about their conclusions. It's one of the best pieces of advice you can give to a young story writer. And that alone, right, just like getting to internalize that is like worth the price of admission. Maybe not the full price of admission. It was pretty steep, but it was very worthwhile to be exposed to those ideas.
And did you ever question it while you were in school?
I almost didn't do enough questioning while I was in school, because I think that there was an attitude of I was a little bit blind. It was like a guy paddling in the boat and the waterfall's coming up, but you're like, I'm not seeing the waterfall. Where like you get to the end of your senior year, and for me, I was like, I nailed college, but I wasn't aware that my parents and life and society were continually providing the next adventure. Like, here comes SUNY Ulster, here comes SVA. And at the end of that, suddenly you're just a guy in New York. Do you need a job? Better find one. And you go, and you run off. So I think that in terms of questioning, and I never questioned screenwriting. I don't think I should have, but it's also because I just wasn't questioning much of anything.
Yeah. I think that's oftentimes a good call. It's just like, I picked, now I go. Rather than like the sort of extra weight and the tax of thinking. That's how I was. I never thought for a moment that I'd major in something else once I declared.
It feels also like there's an element of like being honest about what different people get from higher education. Because I love the old definition of like liberal arts degrees, where it's literally like you are here to be exposed to the vastness of the world. Versus a school experience, which is like you're here to develop a skill.
Train for this particular career.
And those are two very different things.
They are, but they don't have to be different things. I think you can do both at the same time. I think that it's very important to, different people are different, but like I think it's often very important to be working toward a potential clear career path. But I think that you can also, because what to me liberal arts is about is like learning how to learn, like learning the structure of our world. And that allows for a lot more, like sort of this. I kind of think of it as like a tree, that I can then hang new knowledge on instead of like finding out a new fact about, early American history, and I'm like, I have nothing to put that on.
I have no
it's just
context
going
for
to
that,
fall
yeah.
to the ground. Yeah.
Oh, the mind tree.
The mind tree. Do you have a mind tree, Brennan?
Do now.
I made
I've
it.
been provided that metaphor. And
I
now
still have one. I didn't give mine to you. I created a whole new one.
That's the gift of sharing knowledge. There you go. Beautiful.
As college was drawing to a close, did you start to think, what am I going to do next?
It was the sort of like the adventure of youth. I was going to get an apartment with my brother and two of my close friends. And that was going to be awesome. And then I was like, I'm going to get I sort of was like, I'll get a bartending job, and that'll be how I sustain myself while we're waiting for this movie to pick up, and I'll keep writing and stuff like that. And then that kept going on for many long years. Mm-hmm. And then I think it was like 3 years after graduating college where I was like, ooh, I'm missing a tooth. I'm maxed out.
What happened to your tooth?
I didn't take care of my teeth.
Oh, okay.
You have to take care of
You didn't
your
get like
teeth.
a bar fight.
No. Although that's what I told people, because saying like I bit into a burrito and my tooth wobbled and it hurt is not as cool as being like, you should see the other guy. But so I was bartending all the time, and I basically was like, and I had been doing some PA work on Law and Order Criminal Intent, but that's like a very small amount of money to work 16 hours. And you after like being there for a year, you talk to one of the writers, and you're like, how did how many of the writers started as PAs? And they're like, 0, none. And you go, and I went, I've written all this stuff and no one knows who I am or cares.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, and a friend of mine who was very hip and connected went, we should all take classes at UCB. That's where it's happening. That's where the happening people are. And I took classes at UCB. And
which is Upright Citizens Brigade, which is a comedy troupe.
Yes, a comedy troupe, theater school.
Yeah.
It was the happening place until I joined it.
Right at the cut.
When I show up in an institution, that's an indication that the punk rock era has stopped. Okay, some guardrails are now appearing. But yeah, that was transformative, and I went there fully for the purpose of creating community and just knowing other people who were interested in what I was interested in.
Yeah,
and then was put on a house team and was hired as a teacher.
But like, so right before that, so you had these years. Mm-hmm. Did you feel like, were your parents just like trying to help you out, trying to figure out what might be the next step? Were there any professors, or were you just like, I'm a New York City boy and I'm living that New York City boy life?
I'm more the latter. I mean, my parents were incredibly helpful, and they were very, very supportive. But also, my mom yells at me because my brother and I did not tell her how bad it was going.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to ask for.
Yeah.
No one wants to be a burden. So you're just like, it's going great. I'm eating so much different stuff than just ramen with an egg in it.
An egg, though.
That's how you
good work.
That's how you keep your eyes from going matte finish and looking dusty. Because if you just do the 25-cent microwave ramen, you'll be like, that's a big bowl of salt. But you put an egg in there, and the world's your oyster. This is the advice for college students.
They really need.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't think we were too forthcoming with how dire straits were. There was a place on Eldridge Street in New York called Vanessa's Dumplings, where we would go every month or so because you could get 4 dumplings for $1. Mm-hmm. And whenever someone started to look green in the gills from the I think life
just like a nutritional problem.
Yeah, a nutritional and like a deleterious soul thing,
yeah.
Where it's like you'd see someone come back and be like, I think my dog walking job is it's doing it. I'm not going to be here. I'm like Marty McFly, fading out of the photograph. You'd be like, we're going to Vanessa's Dumplings. You're going to spend $5 and eat 20 dumplings.
They're going to have protein in them.
You're going to have protein in them, and we will feast like kings. And that's how we kept the candle lit.
Yeah.
But it was 3 years of that. And professors, very sadly, Tom Davis passed away in 2008. And I miss him dearly. I actually have his photo and a poem from his funeral, a card from his funeral up over my desk. But by the time those years were happening, he was no longer with us. And I had SVA professors, some of which were like, when you graduate, you're going to call me. You're going to check with me once a month. You're going to do that. And that did not pan out exactly like that. And I don't want to shade anyone or name any names, but it didn't pan out like they said it was going to.
It's hard. I mean, like one-to-one mentorship is hard. You know, professors have a lot of students.
A lot of students.
Yeah.
But there were, I think too that there were a lot of, but also I don't know what anyone would have done for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just don't know what anyone would have done for me.
Like I got you that PA thing on Law & Order SVU.
Truly. My friend Matt Selkirk got me the gig on Law & Order. It was great. I still remember those breakfast sandwiches. They were great.
At least there was that.
But yeah, it was. I think I needed to figure it out for myself.
Did you have a moment when you looked up and you were like, I've done career. I did it. I have career.
Yeah. It happens every day. Every day I wake up stunned to be.
When was the first day you woke up and thought you had a career? Was it UCB? Was it no?
There was a moment. Well, UCB was huge, right? So like the moments, if we're talking about it as moments of elation and triumph.
Yeah.
There have been, there were games I wrote for Wayfinder where people would come up and be like, that was the best game ever written. And I would go, we did it. And then I got put on Herald Night and I went, we did it. And then there was,
I don't know what Herald Night is.
Herald Night is a series of improv teams that are selected by the artistic director of the theater. And if you get put on Herald Night, you get to say, hey, someone whose job it is to find funny people thought I was funny.
Yeah.
That's good. And then getting the call from Sam Reich, our beloved friend, when he was like, do you want to come work at CollegeHumor full time? You want to be a cast member?
Yeah.
Changed my life. In terms of the security that comes with like, oh, do I have a career? I think walking into Fantasy High had been airing for a couple months.
This is your show.
My first season of my show, Dimension 20. And we had a thing at C2E2, which was a convention in Chicago. And I walked onto the convention floor and the largest hanging banner in this like airplane hangar size convention hall, this like huge thing, was my dumb face. Full.
It wasn't just like the logo of your show.
Full.
It was Howdy Doody was there in the room.
I am Ozymandias, nerd of nerds. You know, like
gaze upon me.
Yeah, gaze upon me, gaze upon my banner in despair. It was crazy. It really, and I looked at it and I went like, I don't know if that was like I have a career, but that was the first moment where, you know what? It was. I looked at it and I went, well, something has happened.
Yeah.
Something has happened.
Something has happened.
Something has happened.
When you got that call from Sam from CollegeHumor, which is like your first actual, like, how did he even know who you were?
Great question. I had been performing in UCB for some time. I actually met Sam at a dinner. He forgot about it, but it was when he was living in New York too.
He did know you.
But
then he didn't know you.
But then he didn't know me. I guess I didn't rate Earl Sam Reich. You can see it on an episode.
Didn't deliver the value.
Didn't demonstrate value. Kids, if you take nothing else from this, demonstrate value. Every time you meet someone, do a trick, a backflip, anything. Am I lying or am I telling the truth? In some level, I'm telling the truth to myself, but not to you. Take it easy. Don't put that pressure on yourself. I have been doing UCB in New York for a long time, and a couple things happened in quick succession. My beloved apartment, 33 Gold Street, with my brother and dear friends. People moved in with their partners and moved upstate, and that apartment scattered to the winds. I moved in with a woman I was dating at the time, and she dumped me after 3 weeks. And I won a bunch of money on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
What?
I won $50,000 on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which was the only way I could pay off my medical debt. I paid back a loan to my wonderful boss, Ronan Downs, a wonderful man who had been my employer at Beckett's Bar and Grill, where I bartended, who fired me and then saved my life by giving me an interest-free, no-pursuit $2,500 loan to get emergency dental surgery.
Sure.
And I was able to pay that back. And I said, well, the apartment is gone. I have just been dumped, and I've come into some money. It is time to move to Los Angeles. And I moved to Los Angeles and had the worst year of my life. It was so bad. I went out to LA. I started teaching at UCB. I auditioned for Herald Night. Did not get put on. Did not get put on. The people that were running the theater said, Brennan, not so funny. We don't like Brennan. And I went, oh no. And my students would be like, where can we watch you perform? And I would be like, you can't.
Right now.
Right now.
I'm doing it for you.
Bye-bye. So about a year into being there, I applied. My name got put in a hat. I still don't know exactly by who. It might have been Grant O'Brien, but I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah.
My name got put in a hat for the CollegeHumor cast member casting call. And I filmed stuff and I made a packet and I sent it in. I wrote a sketch about me being in the CollegeHumor office and having applied for the job. And they were like, Brennan, why'd you apply for the CollegeHumor job? And I was there and I was like, listen, I have no interest in comedy. Your building is filled with portals. And this was my way to get access. We never made that sketch, but that was the sketch that I applied with. And I didn't get it. They did not accept me. And my mom called me the week after and said, Bran, how are you doing? And for the first, I had lied to my mom many times.
Yeah.
So this was the first time that I told the truth and said, I'm not doing that great. I'm having a hard time. I was not fresh out of college. You know, this was, I'd been doing stuff for a long time. And this was a big backtrack and it was not great. And a month or two after that, I get a call from someone at CollegeHumor saying, do you want to come be in a sketch as just an extra or a background character? And I went, yes. And I got an email the next day saying, Mike Trapp has a web series called Actually. We're doing it as a long form show and we need a preposterous amount of questions. We hear you're a big dork. And I said, I am that. And I'd been running a game of D&D that was Travis Helwig, John Wolfe, and then Emily Axford, Brian Murphy, Zach Oyama, Siobhan Thompson for CollegeHumor people. Because I had met Emily Axford at a rooftop party and she was like, I've never played D&D before and I want to play. And I was like, I can teach you to play D&D. And I taught Emily and Murph and Siobhan and Zach how to play D&D. And it was awesome. And I had another group that was going with Lou Wilson. And that we had become friends, and I was running a home game for him. So they said, you're a big dork, word's getting around town, come write Actually questions. I started working 1 week every month, and I said, that's nice. But I was still at a little desk writing nerdy questions, looking at them, filming fun sketches, and I went, that's so nice. And then after like 2 or 3 months of that, they were like, we want to hire you 2 weeks a month, because you're doing great. And I was turning in twice as many questions as they asked for. And then they're launching Troopers again, which is a Star Wars parody. And they're like, Brennan's a dork, which is how a lot of these conversations started. And they're like, come right on Troopers. And then Zach Oyama wanted to leave the cast to go work on Adam Ruins Everything, which was its own cable show. And he stepped down. They had done a giant casting call 6 months earlier. I discovered that that Sam was actually a huge fan of one of the characters I did in the bit. I think it was Tim Curry eating a slice of pizza. Nothing I like more than a hot, crisp crust. And what ended up happening was I was already working like 3 out of 4 weeks on Troopers, on Actually. A cast member slot opened. They didn't want to do a massive casting call again because they had just done one. And so Sam said, come on up to the big leagues. And I was in upstate New York. I was finishing up a week of Wayfinder. It was my first week going back to Wayfinder. I'd been away for 5 years. So I was like, I miss my roots. I miss home. And I went, and in going home, I got the call on my phone, and Sam Wright, and I pulled over, and I was walking by this little boutique in High Falls, in the hamlet of High Falls, and Sam was like, hey man, we think you're great. You've been doing amazing work. We think you'd be a great cast member. He's like, I just want you to know that we're thinking about you. And then he said, we're gonna hire you. I clicked my heels, and a couple weeks later, I found out that I would be going full time at the end of the week as a cast member, and that's the same week that me and Izzy Rowland started dating. Hard to beat week.
There it is.
Hard to beat week, gang.
You don't know how it's gonna go.
You don't know how it's gonna go. And a few weeks, and then 2 weeks after I found out I was a cast member, they were like, hey, we're launching a thing called Dropout. Everyone needs to make a show. which if you've been trying to make a show your whole life, people coming to you like, hey, you really need to
put a show together. You're like, I got 8.
They're like, it's like someone coming in and being like, bad news, gang. There's 24 birthday cakes in the break room and everybody's got to eat a whole one.
Terrible news. It's a bag of cash. Bag of cash in the parking lot. I don't know what we're going to do with it.
So I was in the middle of making a market research document about actual play shows.
Yeah.
And in the middle of making, I got called into Adam Frucci's office and he was like, hey, I don't know what you're working on right now, but let me put something else on your radar. What about you running an actual play show? And I went, Gah! And I turned my laptop around and I went, I started it.
Because Critical Role existed.
The Adventure Zone existed. Harmon Quest existed. Okay. And they were all, and I was basically just like, I said, my pitch for Dimension 20 essentially was like, we are a comedy brand.
Right.
Comedic, tabletop. And the big successes here are in podcasting and in live streaming.
Right. So let's do an edited show.
Let's do an edited show.
Yeah. And also, you're going to have a guy who is DM'd a lot. And a kid at the camp I do said it was the best story he'd ever heard.
Boom! There you go. And you end up.
I'll get you on the phone with him. He'll tell you.
You end up in this weird position where suddenly all of the bizarre elements of your life, you're like, oh, I have been DMing since I was 10.
Yeah.
And I did run multiple production departments all throughout my teens and 20s at this LARP camp, which is not that dissimilar from what we're doing now. Yeah. It's really like being a showrunner. And I had and then I went through UCB and was on Herald Night in New York, and I taught there. So yeah, I know how to do improvisational comedy and find those beats while telling a story. Yeah. And then you go, oh, I guess I've tumbled through life to end up here, ready to do this.
Do you ever think back about like how you would have done that thing different?
Yeah, I think so. I think the main thing would have been to be a more active participant in my own life, especially when I was living in New York City. Yeah. To be like, you're not still in an incubator. College is not an incubator.
But like, it's so comforting to be in that space.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. It's very comforting to be in that space. And I understand why, because it's very painful.
And a lot of times, like, the school wants to provide that because it's going to help get more students to go to that school, you know?
Of course. You know, there were internships. There were like, I had an internship at The Daily Show, which I was hugely...
That's cool.
It was awesome. Yeah. But it was also a funny thing because I couldn't take enough days. If I had taken too many days off my classes, I would have lost my financial aid. And so I got this internship and could only go 1 day a week, which was like squandering. But at the time I didn't know. No one in the director's office was like.
But there's all these weird limitations
But I literally was like, at the end of the semester, it was like, oh, sometimes they hire interns to be writer's assistants. Maybe that'll be me. But it was the same thing as Wayfinder. No one knew who I was because I couldn't afford to be there more.
Right.
And so you end up going like, I didn't make the most of that opportunity, but I didn't know that what I was doing, you know, you're 18 or you're 19 and no one says, hey, forget all the things you think are important.
Yeah.
You need FaceTime with decision makers, which is the kind of...
Which is also a terribly uncomfortable thing.
Of course, but it's the only real thing. Yeah. It's more real than what I was doing, which was like, I'll carry the most water jugs and that's how they'll know I'd be a good writer's assistant. I got hired to transcribe C-SPAN tapes, and I would come in on a graveyard shift for years afterwards. I was like a PA that would come in.
So this is New York time?
This is New York time.
Yeah.
This is like during bartender time. Every so often they would need C-SPAN tapes transcribed, and they had a league of late night PAs who would come in and do it after everyone else went home. And I would stay till like 2 or 3 in the morning because I thought...
Proving that you were good at the thing that isn't that important for what you actually want to do.
I thought they're going to come in and they're going to see 1 bin of tapes from everybody because we put our names on the bins. Yeah. But they'll say 2 bins that say Brennan, and then they'll know this guy should write on the show. That never happened. I had a lot of things going for me, and I had a small handful of things that weren't going for me. The financial situation of my family was one of the things I did not have going for me, and the good thing I had, at least from the education I received, both from my parents and everything else, and even just interacting with the institutions of education, was an understanding that I'm going to have less. It's not that I'll never get a chance to grab the brass ring. It's just that some kids are on the inside track and they're going to get many chances to grab it. They still might not grab it either, but just their horse, where it is on the carousel, they're going to pass it a lot of times.
Yeah.
And it was made clear to me in a way that I think was not discouraging, but a way that was actually really helpful. That was like, hey, you're going to get that chance too, way less often. And so the work ethic came about, I feel like, as a like, okay, I don't know when the brass ring is going to come up. I don't know how high up it's going to be. So I need to jump and hover in the air forever. I need to be at the most extended jump point for as long as possible because I don't have control over when that ring comes around. So the expending of effort, even those sad double bin nights at the Daily Show, I don't regret them because being a double bin person, I think, ended up being the right call for me.
Yeah. And maybe you were a double bin person the whole time.
Maybe I can't change it. Maybe that's just what I'm like.
Yeah.
Damn.
So you think about paths not taken, about like other, careers you could have had?
Certainly. When I was a little kid, I thought I was going to be a director, right?
Oh, wow.
That was my original.
So an even more difficult career path than becoming a performer.
Performer.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was interesting too because I just, I remember I loved movies, watching movies with my dad when I was a kid. Sure. I was obsessed with movies, and he said the director is the person who makes the movie. And I went, well, I want to make the movie. And then later you discover that directors are these. It's that the skill set is this impossible managerial web.
Oh yeah, it's an executive position. Yeah,
it's an executive position.
So is that an example of a thing where you were like, actually, I don't want to do that?
I discovered, right, where I kind of went through it and I was like, oh, this is phenomenal. But the director is really about, you're the ringleader of a 3-ring circus, right? You're really rooted in technical details, storyboards, shot lists, working with an AD to make the day. And it's not that I don't like or enjoy those skill sets, because honestly, being an executive producer and like producing seasons of the show has a lot of those elements as well. Mm-hmm. But I think that being a director is actually farther away from the things I love about acting and writing.
Could you see yourself with a more traditional job, trying to make marketing happening, trying to tell those kinds of stories?
I think so.
I think you'd be great at that.
I appreciate that. I think being a director, and I also think there was a world where I got a job writing on a show. There's a job where there's a world where I booked an audition and was a professional actor, right? Yeah.
Some of the things that didn't make sense about you make more sense now.
Really?
Yeah, like one, you work very hard to make a story, but 2, you've made a lot of stories.
Yeah.
That wasn't your first time around. And so like you have a system. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like this is like there's a lot of moving parts that are all working really well together here, and that seems pretty amazing to me. Yeah. But now that I see that you've done it a lot, that makes more sense.
Yeah, it's the one skill.
It feels like storytelling is a big part of all of this.
Yeah.
Why do you keep coming back to that?
There's a answer. This is so dorky to cite or reference this. There's an answer I gave to a question similar to this in an actual play that I did for Pat Rothfuss's channel.
Okay.
Where my character was asked something like, why do you do something, or why do you help people? And I think, to get philosophical about it, the question of why presupposes a originator catalyst. So you say why, and it's inviting you to take a step back from something and say, well, here's the cause of the phenomenon that you're asking about. And the truth is, I wanted to tell stories before I was anything else. Yeah. So there is no why to it. It's foundational. It's primary. Gotcha. It's first in the chain. And there is a...
And like the alternate universe where that didn't become your career.
I would still... I still don't play as much DnD as I played when I was a teenager.
Yeah. Like,
this is what I love. Right. And the miracle is that I'm able to do what I love for a living.
Right.
I'd be a bartender somewhere, and I'd be happily playing D&D on the weekends every weekend, and this is what I love doing.
Well, and another theme here, another thing you clearly love doing is helping people learn and having answers for people who have questions. We started off talking about that, but curious if like the theme both of being the recipient and the gifter of the learning, like why does that keep coming back?
The years that I was a teacher at UCB, I loved it so much. And it was so interesting to be in an organization, and this happens with every institution organization, is you find things to become cynical about. You're like, oh, I don't agree with that
for sure.
administrative decision, or I don't agree with this. The thing I could never become cynical about was teaching, because I would watch people who needed this discover it, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of the fun thing about a class is it's such a limited amount of time that if it's not for people, they have not made this great sacrifice of time to discover that something is not for them. And for the people that it is for, it's life-changing. Mm-hmm. I remember I taught so many intensives there was a year that I taught like half of the intensives at UCB.
What's an intensive?
An entire 8-week course crammed into 5 days.
Oh, summer camp.
Summer camp. And I did like 20 of them in a year. So like, was nuts, right?
You getting paid for this?
Yes. It was, that was how I was making a living at that time. I was an improv teacher. And I remember getting to the end of the week, and you would see these people in an improv 101, and it's goofy, and they're doing circle games, and it's very, people like to make fun of improv.
And day 5, they're just smoking cigars and drinking vodka in the corner, and it's just like
we've been through it, gang. And New York can be a very lonely city. Every city can be a very lonely city. We can talk about how capitalism isolates and alienates people from one another, and you become discrete units of labor that are siloed away from meaningful community. And that gives rise to predatory communities like cults and other things that want to address that alienation by then taking advantage of people. People used to say, is UCB a cult? And I would say, in a cult, somebody's making money. It's just because those things are bad, people do need meaningful community of like-minded, of people that share values. And at the end of one of those intensives, I just remember this one guy, we were doing a stretch and share, people were getting excited for the class show, and this one dude started crying. He said, I moved here 4 months ago from Texas, didn't talk to anyone for the first 3 months. I just went to my dishwashing job and had no one to speak to. Mm-hmm. I had bought my bus ticket back to Texas. Bus ticket from New York to Texas. Bought my bus ticket back. It was in my desk, and I'm going to go home and tear it up because I found what I'm supposed to be here doing. And I think about that guy like every week. I just think about what it means to make people feel welcome. I think about what it means to share that it's okay to be excited about something that is just based in the play and wonder of learning and of being a human on the planet that gets to experience life. And teaching to me is something that I genuinely miss, even with how fortunate and charmed my life is and how amazing I feel being able to do what I do for a living. I know one day, maybe I'll be a little old man, I'll be back in a classroom somewhere because it's incredible.
Beautiful. Brennan, thank you so much for sharing so much of your story and all your thoughts.
I hope it was instructive. Amazing. I hope it was instructive.
I can't imagine people didn't just learn some things. Thanks for coming.
Dude, this was great. Thank you so much. Yeah!